Good evening, everyone. My name is Ingzo or Joe. Basically, I'm from Geylang Adventure, so I would like to shift things up a bit more personal to share with you guys a bit about my life story and hopefully inspire you guys in your own small ways on how you can, do some small change eventually. So you guys, I'm sure, have heard about Geylang. It's the only legalized red light district of Singapore. Who didn't know that? Okay, good, all knew that. Alright, so apart from prostitution, there was also a lot of good food. So who didn't know that either? Okay, oh, I see a hand. Oh, okay, he's still underage, it's okay. Small boy. Alright, so these two things, were what a lot of the public knew about Geylang. So that was, but it wasn't really what I went through when I was young. So instead of just good food and red light district, not responding again. Okay. Yeah, so in reality, Geylang was pretty different growing up there. I saw a lot of things that, as a young boy, I did not get to experience in school, in textbooks. So things like a raid, where you see entire throngs of people just running through the streets. You hear screams in the back alleys. You hear shouts and, vulgarities from a young age. I knew them before I even understood them. A lot of times it was also quite dangerous. You would just see and observe people very differently. Some of them as danger, or some of them as there for a certain reason. So from young I was taught, self-taught, to see the anticipation and to recognize different emotions. So for example, you have men. So men on the streets that I encountered daily. As I walked past them, you could see why they were there for, what they were walking, what they were looking for. And it was just very interesting seeing those from a very young age, because you always thought, that the world was beautiful, that it was airy-fairy, and not that it wasn't, but you understood that it was more than meets the eye, that humans are complex, and that there were many different layers. So there were many different groups of people that lived in Geylang. There are no public housing, interestingly, within the core part of Geylang, apart from Geylang East, Dakota, Mountbatten. Within the lorongs, there were actually no public housing. So the majority of the people that call Geylang their home were not Singaporeans. So this was a picture during the World Cup that I took in one of the coffee shops in Geylang. And you can see how many people there are there. And who knows who these guys are? Any guesses? Migrant workers? Yep. So a lot of them were migrant workers. And it struck me from a very young age that this wasn't just my home, but this was also the home of this group of people who ironically were called migrant workers. And a lot of the perceptions of migrant workers are that they are transient, that they are here only for a short period of time and they are leaving. They don't really have much value in terms of interacting and getting to know them better. And I grew up with that kind of mentality as well, going from a very Chinese conservative family, get told like, oh, those guys are dangerous, don't hang out with them. But because of living in Geylang all my life, I actually had the privilege of interacting with a few of them at the coffee shop. You see the regular guys having a beer, just chilling, the ones that serves you, the ones that gives you a drink. And you kind of talk to them a bit and you realize that they're actually very human and quite normal, contrary to popular belief. So the definition of home. To me, home was a place that I can go back and rest and I feel safe. So actually this was the home of migrant workers. And this is a group of Bangladeshi workers that I first met playing badminton just behind my house at the back alley. And they shared a watermelon with me in this picture. So this was after 6 months of friendship. And like every week I would play badminton with them once a night. And it was just in a back alley with a single lamppost. And we would tie the badminton net from a lamppost to the gate, and we would draw the line with chalk, and we will do things like eat watermelon. And it was a very different childhood, as you can tell. In Singapore, we have a problem with space. So, as children, you run wild and free on a piece of field, but we don't have much fields to go around nowadays. And I guess playing badminton with them helped me to realize that actually they were quite normal. Like, they speak English, they tell me about their love life, they tell me about their family problems, their struggles in life, and their thinking. And that was when it struck me that if I could share this experience, this opportunity that I had because I stayed in Geylang with everyone else, what would the world become? So that's where I started Geylang Adventures. So this is Basha. He is one of the Bangladeshi workers. He actually came to Singapore in 5 years ago, and he was in medical school before that in Bangladesh. So in year 2, his dad had a minor stroke, so he had to quit his job, quit his school and come to Singapore to work. And when that happened, it was a huge sacrifice because he and his twin brother were the oldest in the family. So when they came to Singapore, their younger siblings had to take care of their dad, and they had to meet the financial burden. So he's now 5 years on, he's now an electrician, he's a supervisor, and he credits his skill to when he was studying medical school, he was training to be a gynecologist. And you know how gynecologists have steady hands? So that makes him a really good electrician now. And with his knowledge that he has about globalization and about issues of the world, he really gave me a very down-to-earth breakdown of perspectives. And in Singapore, we get bombarded with a lot of news, a lot of ideals and comments. But somehow the simplicity of life back home, from where they come from normally, it offers a very refreshing perspective. And I was at his house, and I was cooking with them. And then I looked up at the sky, because they have this courtyard in their bungalow. They stayed at level 1 with 6, 7 other people in one room. And we were just cooking naan. And then I looked up at the sky, and you know how they live just behind me? So the sky that they see every day is the same sky that I see every day. And then that was where it hit me again. Like, how come we both see the same sky every day, but we don't go through the same motions, we don't feel the same way about society, we don't feel the same way about people. And that experience led me to want to kind of bridge the gap between Singaporeans and migrant workers. So that was how Back Alley Barber started. Actually, it started 1 year ago exactly. Facebook reminded me yesterday. So this was what defined home to be. Home was a space where it was safe. Home was a space where people could come together and talk to one another. And not a lot of barriers, apart from language. So I just put 2 chairs to Back Alley and we started cutting. We learned it from YouTube. The other guy's my cousin, by the way. So we practice on one another and on ourselves. And I've been cutting my hair for 1.5 years, like just myself. Actually, so this year, in January, I actually quit my job in Singapore, and just nice I graduated from school. So I went to Australia to work as a migrant worker. So this was 3 months. I worked as a shed builder. It was really to put myself in the shoes of a migrant worker and just experience a bit of how it was like, to work away from home and form a home away from home. And 3 months there, the heat was 40 degrees, and you didn't really have family, but you had friends that you made along the way. And that was what I learned, that sometimes, home does not define by a physical, geographical location, but about the people around you. And therefore, in what I do now, I believe in creating opportunities like interaction between a Singaporean and a migrant worker in a neutral setting, without societal standards in terms of wealth or statuses, but just having a very neutral one-on-one conversation. And eventually building a community where everybody is kind of playing a role in helping each other emotionally and mentally, and making friendships and kind of just breaking down the social barriers that we so often see. And the community does not just extend to migrant workers itself, but also the people that we see every day, day to day. So this is the cardboard auntie around Geylang, and I actually managed to cut hair for her, and I had the honor to seeing her every day growing up, pushing a trolley of cardboard, but never getting the chance to talk to her. And when I finally saw her while cutting hair one day during Black Alibabas, that was when I told her, hey, can I cut your hair? And that was when I learned about her story, and it really impacted me how many stories that I've never heard, how many stories that could have been told that so many people could have been impacted by. But it wasn't about the story collecting journey, but it was about relating to it and feeling something about it and eventually creating something out of it. So I'm sure you guys heard of the Little India riot. This was the headlines a couple of days after that. Geylang, a potential powder keg of gunpowder ready to explode. References of a hint of lawlessness, quoting statistics. And what I just described to you was my home, is Geylang. And a lot of times in media, you see issues, social issues that affect spaces. So a lot of times the spaces are defined also by what you read. And that's what now I strive to do as well, to change perceptions about Geylang. What Geylang actually is, isn't what is portrayed on media, but about what is happening on the ground, about the communities that exist. And that is what I strive to build now, defining home differently, bringing people together, and eventually getting a bit of understanding between each other as humans, and kind of forming those bonds and friendships. Thank you for your time. Good night.